MLS players are ready to make the jump to Europe? And also, why should MLS players make that jump to Europe? Why do MLS players need to leave and go overseas to develop? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. First is just being able to play with more talented players. And while that seems like a pretty obvious answer, that can go a bit deeper. They get to situations as the most talented and only really great player on their own team where you can get marked out of games. Think Brenden Aaronson when he was at the Philadelphia Union, and he was really the biggest threat on the ball. Alejandro Bedoya, Ilsinho, they're solid players, but you know you have to worry about Brenden Aaronson. So you always have a player on him. And because of that, he doesn't even get to showcase his talent. He doesn't get to play much in those games. But at RB Leipzig, when he has somebody like a Dike ahead of him, and he's playing with some great players, he has more freedom to develop. That is just one benefit of playing with a more talented team. Then you just have to consider just training and going up against amazing players every single day. That's going to get anybody better, no matter what the situation is. And while they're playing with better players, that can help them really have good habits. As when you're with a bad team, you can just get some bad habits. The Wilfried Zaha effect, where you just try to do too much for your own team, and it gets to a point where when you get outside of it, you're clearly out of your element. So just being on the field with great players, training with them week in, week out, that's a huge benefit of going to Europe. And aside from just the players, the style of play in the MLS is not the best. The play is a bit slower compared to other leagues. Brenden Aaronson, again, brought the speed of play in Austria, which isn't exactly the highest level of competition, was just a tad higher than the MLS. And with that, players can start to think a lot better. And when you're thinking quickly, those decisions in the final third, they really come along. When you're playing it out the back, defenders can feel a lot better. Like goalkeepers that make really quick decisions, that's a huge benefit to playing overseas. And while I respect coaches in the MLS like Jim Curtin at the Philadelphia Union, I'm from Philadelphia, this is where a lot of the references are going to come from, and coaches like Jesse March who have moved on, it doesn't compare to working with the best coaches week in, week out. I mean, someone like Anthony Robinson was playing at the worst team in the Premier League, or one of the worst teams in the Premier League that got relegated. He was working with Scott Parker week in, week out, and he is by all counts a very good manager. Players have developed well under him. He seems to be a great man manager as well. Matt Miazga is being loaned out every year, and his career is basically stalling. And he worked with Vincent Kompany last year, one of the best center backs of the generation. With better coaching, these players can develop faster, become more aware of different tactical situations. When you're more aware of different tactical situations, it can do very well in the national team as, let's say, you're a center back who wants to be on the ball, give him the ability to step forward. If that's something that one of our coaches wants, that's going to help you break into a team. All of those reasons are good reasons to go to Europe. Just the coaching, the better players, the style of play, all those can really help a player develop a lot more than they could in the MLS. So now, what do you need to really be ready to make that jump? Well, you have to be good enough as a player. I mean, not only just going overseas isn't going to help. I mean, I mentioned Austria, but if you just go to Sweden or rot on a bench, it's not going to help anything. I mean, I don't think anybody's too high on Haji Wright compared to what they would be if he was playing at the MLS. And Joe Scaley is somebody who went over to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and he hasn't played in a very long time, and at this point he's not even mentioned in our right-back conversation. So you really have to be just ready to go in, break into a team, and get ready to play. Then you have to be mentally ready. I mean, leaving home, that could be tough for anybody, especially a 16-year-old if that's the situation. It's going to be a tough transition. I mean, there are special circumstances. Somebody like Giovanni Reina, who was actually born in England, traveled a lot. There's the military families, which is a good amount of our players who traveled around a lot. Bilingual households, that can make the language gap a lot easier if you're already accustomed to learning a different language. Like, all that can make it easier, but it is still a tough situation to leave home like that. So that's something you have to be aware of. And then you don't want to leave a good situation. If you're in the MLS, you're developing, you shouldn't leave for no reason. Think somebody like Renato Sanchez, when he left Benfica too soon, his career stalled. He was clearly still a talented player. He's shown that ability. But after he left Benfica, he was at Bayern Munich, wasn't really playing, had a bad loan move. His career finally got going again, but it stalled out for a little bit, and you really don't want that to happen. So now, with that, who do I think is really ready to make that jump? First, Daryl Dk. I mean, this is a bit cheating because he already did very well at Barnsley, but he has been scoring goals at a very high level in the MLS. He was doing great at Barnsley in the championship, turned them from a team that was pretty good to in the playoff race. So Daryl Dk, I feel like he's definitely ready. He honestly may be ready for a Premier League move, but playing time might be limited, so going to the Bundesliga, that could really help him. But either way, before 2022, he should really get a move announced this year. Next, Caden Clark. He's probably already the best player in New York on the New York Red Bull. Just in New York in general, actually. But he's done. He's doing very well. He's already their top goal scorer. The move is already announced to RB Leipzig, so it's kind of out of our hands now. But I think he is ready, and I think that he'll do very well at RB Leipzig. He's been ready to make that jump for a while. I think he's ready. Gianluca Boosho, I feel like he's an interesting case because he's already one of the best players on his team. He is ready to go, but I feel like just finishing out this year would definitely help him out. His defensive ability could improve, and the MLS is a decent place to develop a good defensive midfielder. I mean, guys like Kyle Beckerman spent his whole career in, I think he did, spent his whole career in the MLS, and I feel like he can develop that more physical play. I feel like that could really help him. However, if he does move, it seems likely he'll move to Italy. That's also a very good place to develop a more defensive side for a technical midfielder. Claudia Marcizio from Juventus a few years ago, he was more of an attacking player, but he was really able to develop more into a box-to-box defensive midfielder. Barella, who's on Italy right now, he was more of an attacking player. Now he's got a good defensive ability, so I think Italy could help that as well. But I just want to mention there are some benefits of staying in the MLS for a while, but Gianluca Boosho, he is ready to move on. Then Matt Turner is an interesting guy. He's a very solid shot stopper right now, and I feel like he could really walk into several teams across Europe who really could use that very good goalkeeper. Playing in the European side, I feel like that would really help him with his distribution because playing in the MLS, you don't really need to be that good with your feet, but when you go to Europe, and if it's depending on the team, you could have to be distributing the ball a lot. You could have the ball back to you a lot of times. If he's able to get complete game time, like playing the full time, and he's on a team where he can really develop his distribution, that could really help him. And also, being on a European schedule, soccer-wise, that's just good. I mean, especially for a goalkeeper, you don't have just, 4 months where you're just not playing. I mean, if he's on that European schedule, I mean, playing all year, then you have the summer tournaments, that's a lot more game time, though. I mean, as opposed to the MLS where you basically stop playing in your season to play in the Gold Cup. That's not additional time. But when you're in Europe, you have the full season and then the Gold Cup. That's additional time. So, man, I feel like moving on as a goalkeeper would definitely be good. But if he does stay in development, I mean, MLS has good goalkeepers. I mean, United States has been traditionally good at bringing up goalkeepers. So it's not anything like drastic. He doesn't need to make this move. And I would only do it if he's guaranteed playing time, but I wanted to bring him up as a name. Those are the guys who I feel like are definitely ready right now to move on to Europe. And now these guys, I'm going to go through 3 players I feel like probably by the end of the season I'm going to be ready for them to move on. Cade Cowell. He's somebody I want to finish out the season, as I mentioned, but man, he's developed all the physical tools that he needs. I feel like he can't develop that much more in the MLS. He's already ready. He's a very good technical player. He knows how to score a goal. And I feel like he just developed a little bit more quicker and better with his hold-up play, with his ability to drop into the midfield, pick out a pass, because that ability is there. But, man, if he has some really good wingers playing alongside him, I feel like he could develop so much quicker. So Cade Cowell, he's somebody who I really want to move on. Great player, and hopefully he can do that. Justin Che, he's going to move on for him anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But, Justin Che, he's somebody who could really use that move to Europe. He's got a very good understanding of the game. He's good athletically. I feel like it's good for him to get some game time at FC Dallas because, just getting going with some games under his belt, that's definitely a good thing. But, man, he's somebody, if Bayern Munich is interested in him, they've got a pretty good record at developing players. He might have to be loaned out a couple of times, but I feel like that move would be very good for him. And then James Sands is somebody who I would really like to see. He's developed very well in New York. He's why I was hesitating at calling Cade Clark the best player in New York, but man, he's been dominating at the MLS for a couple of years now. I don't feel like he could get much more out of staying in New York. So yeah, James Sands, someone who I really feel like is ready to move on, and his being very good at the ball being very good on the ball as a center back is something that's huge for a player in Europe. So James Sands, I feel like he needs that move. Next, guys who I want to see develop a bit more before they move on, but I feel like they should be moving on. Like the link should start next season, so have 2 more MLS seasons under their belt before they move on. Djordje Bello, he's somebody who's very talented left back in a USA team that could really use that end. But I feel like him developing a bit more would be probably better. Right now he's only been linked to moves to Turkey, which, while that's a decent level, I don't feel like it's desirable. I feel like Djordje Bello should be playing a bit more. Just make sure he's ready to make that move and continue to develop every aspect of his play. And Atlanta especially is a very good place for him to develop. I mean, Almiron had moved on straight from Atlanta to starting it for Newcastle, so yeah, I feel like Djordje Bello could stay for a bit longer. David Ochoa, he's somebody I want to stay longer because just as a goalkeeper, just keep playing, make sure you keep getting game time, don't risk moving and screwing that up, because if he's playing this much right now, you don't want to mess with that. Don't want to go be a backup for a few years. Just keep playing, and when the move comes, it'll come, because he's definitely going to move on eventually, but just make sure you're ready for that move. Then Leon Flach. I expect him to move on soon, but I feel like he just needs just a run of games. He was in Europe for a while, and Germany, and Bundesliga too, actually, but he's got some great defensive attributes. He does need to develop more technically before moving on, but that could be probably sped up if he moves to Europe, gets into a different team. But I feel like getting games is more important right now. This is his first run of games in a long time, and he's made huge strides already. So I feel like just a couple more years, maybe at the end of 2022, can consider moving on. Then Ricardo Pepe, he's broken into the FC Dallas team. He's on a great goal-scoring run, and I'd really like to see that continue. I wouldn't want to mess that up by mess up just getting his confidence going by moving him on too soon. Another guy who just 2 seasons, just stay here. And when I say 2 seasons, I mean end of 2022. Like, I'm counting 2021 and 2022 as the 2 seasons. So yeah, I feel like he still has a bit longer before I would really want to consider him moving on. But, man, Ricardo Pepe is someone I'm very excited about. And then Cole Bassett. I just want to see Cole Bassett go on, like, a huge, really dominant run where you're just looking at him like, man, like, every week you want to see him play, see what he does. I don't feel like he's at that point yet, so I just want to see him like a bit longer in the MLS, just make sure he's like really ready, because when he moves on, he's going to be moving on to a good team. He's a good player, so I want to make sure he's ready for that. So next guys are guys who, not real timetable. I really want to see them develop a lot more before they move on. Jesus Ferreira, he was someone who I think the Olympics kind of screwed up my view of him, because he was not good in that, and I just feel like he needs to develop it more before he should consider moving on. He's been playing in a couple of different positions. I want him to get that one position down. I want him to just have a huge run on the first team, do all that before he consider moving on from FC Dallas, because it's a good place to develop. We're just going to go through FC Dallas for a bit. Paxton Pomykal, I feel like I butchered that name. He could use a lot more game time, I think. If it's FC Dallas, I'm watching games without the sound on. I'm just probably have it on when I'm working out or something. So, yeah, my bad on that. So, but yeah, he's somebody who I just want to see him get a huge run in the team before he moves on. I feel like now it's definitely too soon. If he ends up impressing Bayern Munich or something like a lot of FC Dallas players have, then that could happen. But I feel like playing is more important right now. And Tanner Tessman, I've seen him linked with a move away, and I don't really understand it. I think he needs a lot more game time. He's not starting for FC Dallas right now. I feel like he has a lot more developing to do, and yeah, I don't feel like he's ready. I wanted to mention him for that. Then there are guys like Moses Nyeman, just want to see him play more, and Frankie and Amaya want to see him play, but more before they move on. And a couple other guys I wanted to mention, Eryk Williamson. He's actually a bit older than a lot of other players, but he's on a pretty good run right now, and I really wouldn't want to break that up, because it can be good to have your domestic league be strong. So, like, there are guys who don't really want to move on because, like, Kyle Beckerman, somebody I mentioned before, just a very good MLS player, and he put in work for us at major tournaments. Like, he probably would have gotten better, but there wasn't, like, a need for it. And with someone like Eryk Williamson, I don't think his ceiling is, like, extremely high. I don't see him being a Champions League player. So just staying in the MLS, continuing to develop, making sure you're a good player, just becoming solid. Like, I don't think he needs more than that. Kellen Acosta, he's somebody who mentioned going on, and while I could see it benefiting him because he's somebody who I'm very critical of him technically as a player, but I feel like if he leaves the MLS, his career's kind of likely to end up like Mick Diskerud, if you even remember him. Then somebody like Miles Robinson. Like, it could work if he goes to Europe, but he might be good for him to become the next Aaron Long or an Omar Gonzalez type player, where he's always going to be a decent option. I mean, right now, like, Aaron Long was ahead of Matt Miazga and Mark McKenzie on the depth chart before he got hurt. So just having that guy be a decent option at all times, especially in Atlanta, which is I feel like it's almost only a pseudo MLS team over there, but yeah, I feel like him staying isn't a bad thing. And guys like Keaton Parks, he needs to stay more. Djordje Mihailovic, I want to see him elevate his game to the next level, but playing in Montreal could be a good experience. I mean, I can't think of any American players who went from Montreal to Europe, but I know they speak French there. You're leaving the country, so I mean, that's basically getting himself ready to move on, and he's still going to have full game time in the MLS. He's probably going to be around American players, so I feel like that's a good move for him. I mean, I don't feel like Montreal's the best situation, but it's kind of a weird thing where that's like a good option for like to test out if you're ready for Europe on the mental side. And lastly, Julian Araujo. God, I don't have his name down, but I might not have to get it down because I'm going to slow down coverage of him. I would have mentioned him earlier, but he doesn't seem to be committed to, or he seems to be considering Mexico or the United States. Good for him, just taking his time, making sure he makes the right decision. Like, because we're kind of stacked at the right back position, but yeah, so I'm going to slow down covering him until he makes the decision. Yeah, whatever he does, like, good for him. I'm not going to root against him or anything. I'm still rooting for Ayo Akinola, even though he committed to Canada, but just wanted to mention that with Julian Araujo. So yeah, that's all I have to talk about. I mean, MLS players getting ready to make that jump to Europe. I mean, man, it's a tough transition, but if you get it right, I mean, we've seen Weston McKennie, we've seen Tyler Adams. That's something that you need to do, and I'm really hoping that a lot of these guys can do it, and I'm looking forward to seeing Daryl Dk, Gianluca Boosho, Caiden Clark all go over to Europe, and hopefully it goes well for them. That's all I have to talk about. I'm not going to say that. Yeah, I'll see you.